Hello everyone and welcome once again to Let's Play Skyrim. Last time we left off exploring the town of Ravenrock, and that's what we're going to continue to do right now. We are inside Ianth Farm and we've stumbled across a copy of the Poison Song Book 3, which I'll go ahead and read and remove from my book list. The Poison Song Book 3 by Briston Zell. Tay was 18 in the year 685 of the First Era when he first saw Mournhold, the city of spires, home of the goddess. His cousin Calcorith, already a senior initiate in the temple, gave him a couple rooms on the ground floor of the house he had purchased. They were small and unfurnished, but bittergreen grew outside the windows, and when the wind blew they filled his bedroom with a lovely, spicy air. The chords of the song did not trouble him any more. Sometimes he was even unconscious to it, so low and melodic it had become. Occasionally, when he was passing through the streets on the way to the temple for his instruction, someone would pass him and the song would rise in intensity before falling away again. Whatever was different about those people, Tay never tried to ascertain. He remembered the last time he had let the song lead him and called for him to murder his young cousin Vaster. The memory did not trouble him unduly, but he did not want to hurt anyone again unless he had to. House couriers regularly brought Tay letters from Bainara, still back in Sandal House on the island of Gorn. She might have gone to study at the temple. She was certainly intelligent enough, but she chose not to. In a year or two at most, she would have to leave and assume her place in House Indoril, but she was not in a hurry. Tay welcomed the trivial, gossipy news the letters brought, and responded back with news of his own studies and romances. In his third month in Mournhold, he had already met a girl. She was also a student at the temple, and her name was Akra. Tay wrote enthusiastically about her to Bainara, describing her as having the mind of Sothasil, the wit of Vivek, and the beauty of Almalexia. Bainara replied back merrily that if she had known how blasphemous students of the temple were allowed to be, she might have become an initiate herself. "You are very devoted to your cousin," Akra laughed when Tay showed her the letter. "Am I looking at the last remains of a thwarted romance?" "She's lovely, but I never thought of her that way," Tay scoffed. "Incest never particularly interested me." "Is she a very close cousin, then?" Tay thought for a moment. "I don't know. Truthfully, no one spoke much of either her parents or mine, so I really don't know how we were connected. They were casualties of the War of the Red Mountain, that I know, and it seemed to cast rather a pall on the adults' humor whenever we asked about her parents or mine. After a while we stopped asking. But you're an Indoril too. Perhaps you're a closer cousin to me than Bainara." "Perhaps so," Akra smiled, rising from her chair. She uncoiled her hair, which had been pulled up in the formal arrangement reserved for well-born priestesses. As Tay watched transfigured, she removed the small brooch that fastened her robe to her shoulder cape. The soft silken fabric slipped down slowly, exposing her dark, slender body to him for the first time. "If we are, does incest particularly interest you now?" As they made love, the song began a slow, rhythmic ascension in Tay's head. The vision of Akra before him darkened and was replaced by images from his nightmares before returning again. When finally he collapsed, spent, the room seemed filled with the fiery red clouds of his dream, and the scream of the woman and her child facing death echoed in his head. He opened his eyes, and there was Akra smiling at him. Tay kissed her, grateful to have her in his arms. For the next 2 weeks, Tay and Akra were never far apart. Even when they were at study in opposite wings of the temple, Tay thought of her and somehow knew she was thinking of him. They would rush to be together afterwards, ravishing one another in his rooms every night and in a private corner of the temple garden every day. It was while Tay was rushing to see his beloved one afternoon that the song rose up in powerful, strident tones at the approach of an old, ragged woman. He closed his eyes and tried to quiet it, but when he looked again at her purchasing cork-bulb papyrus from a street vendor, he knew who she was. His old nursemaid from Gorn, Ediba, she who had abandoned him without even a farewell to join her family on the mainland. She didn't see him, and as she passed down the street, Tay turned and began to follow. They walked through shadowy passageways into the very poorest part of the city, a quarter which was as alien to him as the wildest principality of Akavir. She unlocked a small wooden door on a street without a name, and he finally called out her name. She didn't turn, but when he followed, he found that the door had been left ajar. The chamber was murky and damp like a cave. She stood facing him, her face even more wrinkled than he had remembered it, etched with lines of sorrow. He closed the door behind him, and she took his hand and kissed it. "You are so tall and strong," Ediba said, beginning to weep. "I should have killed myself before I let them take me away from you." "How is your family?" Tay asked coldly. You are my only family, she whispered. The Indoral pigs forced me to leave, thrusting their blades in my face, when they discovered that I serve you and your family, not them. That bitch girl Bainara saw me at a prayer of mourning. You're speaking like a madwoman, Tay sneered. How could you love me and my family but hate the House Indoril? I am of the House Indoril. You are old enough to know the truth, Ediba said fiercely. Tay had bitterly joked about her madness, but he saw something close to it burning in her ancient eyes. You were not born of House Indoril. They brought you into their house after the war, like they and the other houses brought in all the orphans. It was the only way they saw to erase history and remove all traces of their enemies by raising their enemies as one of them. Tay turned toward the door. I can see why you were taken away from Gorn, old woman. You are delusional. Wait, Ediba cried, rushing to a musty cabinet. She retrieved from it a glass globe that shimmered with a spectrum of color even in the chamber's gloom. Do you remember this? You slew that little boy Vaster because he possessed it. And I took it from your room because you were not ready to face the facts of your inheritance and responsibility then. Did you not wonder why this bauble drew you so? Tay gasped, and though he did not want to, he said, I hear a song sometimes. That is the song of your ancestors, of your true family, she said, nodding. You must not fight it, for it is a song of destiny. It will lead you to do what must be done. Shut up, Tay howled. Everything you say is a lie. You're insane. Ediba threw the globe to the ground with all her might, shattering it with a deafening retort. The shards melted into the air. All that was left was a small silver ring, simply wrought with a flat crown. The old woman quietly picked it up and handed it to him, while he stood with his back against the door, trembling. This is your inheritance as the bearer of the sixth house. The ring's crown was meant for stamping and sealing official house proclamations. Tay had seen his Uncle Triffith's similar ring, crested with the wing, which was the seal of House Indoril. This ring was different, with an insect design, which he remembered from the day when Kenna Gafrisi had taught the house heraldry to Benara and him. It was the symbol of the accursed House Dagoth. The song took over all of Tay's senses. He heard its music, smelled its horror, tasted its sadness, felt its power, and the only thing he could see before him was the flames of destruction. When he took the ring and placed it on his finger, his mind was not aware of what he was doing. Nor was Tay aware of anything but the song when he removed his dagger from its sheath and thrust it into his old nursemaid's heart. Tay did not even hear her final words when Ediba fell bleeding to the ground and groaned with a blood-streaked smile, "Thank you." When the veil of the song lifted, Tay did not realize at first he was no longer dreaming. Before him had been flames, the very ones that destroyed the home of his birth, and flames were before him again. But they were flames from a fire he had struck outside the crumbling tenement that were already burning through walls, consuming the body of his old nursemaid. Tay fled through the streets as people began to call for the guards. Oh, there's that. That's lovely. I'll take the coin purse. Why not? Here is to Milore from Nilara. A note will remove from the note list and read, of course. Milore, I hope the day finds you well. Well, Athras and I have finally mustered the courage to return to Mournhold and pick up the pieces. We haven't been back to the manor in almost 50 years, but things haven't changed much. The city feels a bit empty. Baron Zaya's palace is still completely unoccupied, and most of the Redoran Guard have been reassigned to other parts of Morrowind. They've continued to make improvements to Mournhold Temple, removing the last vestiges of Almalexia's mark and adding a new sanctuary. Plaza Brindisi Durom has changed as well. House Indoril has erected a large building there to house all of the new pilgrims and priests that seem to have flocked here to pay their respects at the temple. Athras has returned to work as a jewel crafter, and he's gaining quite a following. He's bringing in a good bit of coin, a little of which I've sent to you, as usual. Things are going well, and at this rate we'll have the manor restored to its former glory by winter. I know you're tired of hearing about it, but I implore you to reconsider my offer. We have plenty of room here, and both of you are always welcome to join us. I know it's tough out there, but suffering in that horrible place just to prove a point isn't necessary anymore. Just a little sisterly advice. Okay. Let's keep looking around. Nothing important up here, so let's check the basement. If you've played Morrowind and reached the city of Aldrune or any other Redoran-controlled areas, by now you should really be recognizing the architectural style we're dealing with here. These are very much Redoran buildings. as they existed in Morrowind and now exist once again here. Let's see, we really got nothing except some food here. Let's check this last room. Okay, here's some coin purses. And a chest. Well, we've read all these. I think Ancestors in the Dunmer was actually in the base game, even though it originated in Morrowind. There's some more gold. The Axeman, Myths of Sheogorath. Great. Oh, yes. A couple books I almost missed. We've read Red Year Volume 1, but here is The Poison Song, Book 6, which we can read and then remove from the list. So we've skipped a couple volumes in the story, just how it goes, I suppose. The Poison Song, Book 6, by Briston Zell. The magnificent sprawl of the stronghold of Indoranion was aglow in the light of the setting sun. Commander Jazrat watched it slowly disappear into the horizon as he led the caravan southwestward. It was a strange practice for him to lead a night operation, but scarcely more bizarre than anything else he was facing. He was only 70 years of age, far from old for a Bosmer, and yet he felt like he belonged to another era. He had known the land of East Vardenfell his entire life. Every forest, every garden, every small village between Red Mountain and the Sea of Ghosts had been home to him. But now it was all different, twisted into a world he did not recognize since the eruption and the year of Sun's death. It made night travel all the more treacherous, but it was a risk he was ordered to take. The Ashmire appeared quite suddenly. If a sharp-sighted scout hadn't seen it and given the signal, the entire caravan might have been swallowed whole. Jazrat cursed. It had not been on the map, but that was hardly surprising. It was a huge unnamed scathe stretching as far as anyone could see. The commander considered his options. He might lead his party to the southeast, toward Tel Arun, and then try and approach due west. As he consulted his map, he noticed a glimmer of a campfire in the distance. Accompanied by his lieutenants, Jazrat drove his guar forward to investigate what appeared to be an Ashlander man and woman. "This is no longer your realm," he bellowed. "Don't you know it's been ruled by the temple, that these are house lands now?" The couple shuffled to their feet and began quietly walking away toward a narrow ridge between hill and Ashmire. Jazrat called them back. "Do you know a way around the scathe?" he asked. They nodded, their eyes still to the ground. Jazrat signaled to his caravan. "You will lead us, then." It was a treacherous, winding crossing, almost too tight for the guars. The wagons themselves scraped as the drivers pulled to avoid the Ashmire. The Ashlander man and woman whispered to one another as they led the caravan. "What are you mumbling about, Enwa?" Jazrat hollered. The man did not turn around. "My sister and I were talking about the Dagoth rebellion, and she was guessing that you were bringing arms to the stronghold at Falenzerano, which is why you chose to cross the Ashmire rather than taking a road." "I might have known," Jazrat laughed. "You Ashlanders are so hopeful whenever you see signs of trouble in the houses in the temple. I hate to dampen your spirits, but what you're speaking of is hardly a rebellion. Merely a few isolated incidents of unpleasantness. Tell your sister that." As they plodded onward, the narrow ridge began to taper even more. The Ashlanders found a low, jagged crevasse in the hills, a crack from a lava flow even predating Sun's death. The caravan scored the rock walls as it moved through. Commander Jazrat, after 20 years of uncertainty in a land he did not understand, felt a twinge of his old instinct. This, he thought to himself, would be a fine place for an ambush. "Ashlander, how close are we?" he shouted. "We've arrived," Dagoth Tython replied, and gave the signal. The assault was over in mere minutes as it had been calculated from the start. When the last body of the house guard had sunk beneath the Ashmire, only then was the inventory of the caravan revealed. It was better than they had hoped, virtually everything the rebellion needed. Daedric swords, dozens of suits of armor, quivers of fine ebony bolts, and rations enough to last for weeks. "Go on ahead to the camp," Tython smiled at his sister. "I'll lead the caravan. We should be there within a few hours' time." Akra kissed him passionately and gave the sign of recall. In an instant she was back in her tent exactly as she had left it. Humming the song, she removed the Ashlander rags and chose an appropriately diaphanous gown from her trunks. Precisely the sort of dress Tython would love seeing her in when he returned. "Worasa," she called to her servant, "summon the troops together. Tython and the others will be here very soon with all the weapons and rations we need." Morasa can't hear you now, said a voice Akra hadn't heard in weeks. She turned, expertly removed every trace of surprise from her face. It was indeed Induril Baynara, but not the quivering creature she had left behind at the massacre at Sandal House. This woman was an armored warrior who spoke with mocking confidence. She wouldn't be able to summon the troops if she could. You may have weapons and rations, Akra, but there's no one left to arm or feed. Dagoth Akra made the sign of recall, but nothing happened. The moment we heard you banging around in the tent, my battle mages cast a diffusion of all magicka, Baynara smiled, opening the tent further to invite a dozen house soldiers in. You won't be leaving. If you think that my brother will walk into your trap, you underestimate his allegiance to the song, Akra sneered. It tells him everything he needs to know. I have convinced him to no longer fight it, and let it lead him and us to our ultimate victory. I've known him longer and better than you ever did, said Baynara coldly. Now I want to hear what the song is saying to you. I want to know where I can find Tay. Tython, my lady, Akra corrected her. He is no longer a slave to your house and the temple's lies. You can torture me all you wish, but I swear to you the next time you see him it will be because he wishes it, not you, and that will be your very last moment alive. Don't you worry, Serio, Baynara's Nightblade winked at her. Everyone says they won't break under torture, but everyone always does. Baynara left the tent. It was all a part of warfare, she understood that, but there would be little relish in witnessing it. She could not even watch as the house soldiers disposed of the rebel corpses. She had hoped she would grow numb to the bloodshed after weeks of following Tython and Dakra, massacre after massacre. It didn't matter to her that now the bodies were of her enemies. Death was still death. She had only been in her tent for a few minutes when her Nightblade appeared. Not so tough as she appeared, that one, he grinned. In point of fact, all I had to do was ask her nice and point my dagger at her belly, and she was blubbering everything. Not too surprising, really. It's always the ones that talk big that crumble fast. I remember way back a couple years ago, before you was even born. Garuan, what did she say? Baynara asked. The song, whatever that is, told her brother that she got herself caught and not to return to camp, Nightblade replied, only a trifle annoyed at having his fascinating story cut short. He's got a half-dozen mer with him, and they're going to try to assassinate the fellow that led the Induril army in the war, General Induril Triffith. Uncle Triffith, Baynara gasped. Where is he stationed now? I'm not sure myself, Serio. Do you want me to ask if she knows? I'll come with you, said Baynara. As they walked towards Akra's tent, cries of alarm sounded. The situation became abundantly clear even before they reached the site. 3 guards were dead, and the prisoner had escaped. Interesting woman, said Garuan. Weak heart, but a strong arm. Should we send word of warning to General Induril Triffith? If we can find where he is in time, said Baynara. Alrighty. Now, it does occur to me that I've skipped over a few copies of a book that we haven't actually read yet. So let's head back and nick it right quick. Just so we can get it off the list.
Find my pickaxe yet?
Excuse me. I'm talking about The Red Year Volume 2. If I can find a copy. I thought there was one in here, but if not, there's certainly one in Morvain Manor, so we'll grab it there.
My husband Bendel feared visitors would shun Raven Rock. I'm glad to see he was mistaken.
That's Poison Song, but there's The Red Year Volume 2. Let's read it and then take it off the list. The Red Year Volume 2 by Melis Ravel. Foreword. When I originally decided to write this accounting of the Red Year, I elected to travel across Morrowind and speak to the Dunmer people themselves. I sought first-hand accounts and personal views about the cataclysmic event. I felt that if I simply did the research in the library stacks at the College of Winterhold, I wasn't really telling the tale that needed to be told. What struck me as I moved from city to city, town to town, camp to camp, is that all of the Dunmer I met shared an incredible bond of sheer courage and unshakable faith. So what began as a chronicle of one of the worst events in the history of Morrowind became something altogether different, the celebration of a people who can never be defeated. Saldus Lervu, Vivec City. I was a trader back then, ran a pack guar from Vivec City clear down to Narcissus. I was walking along the south road when the strangest thing happened. All of the noise around me stopped. The normal things one hears as they travel, like the sound of the wind blowing through the treetops. It was just deathly quiet. I felt a tingling sensation all over my body, and my guar began to stomp around. Whatever it was driving him crazy. As I tried to get him under control, there was a massive explosion from the center of the city. I saw the cantons fall apart before I was knocked off my feet. Then I remember the ground starting to rumble. It lasted for a long time, and it receded into the distance as if directed toward the center of Vardenfell. A few minutes later, the Red Mountain erupted, sending a huge cloud of fire into the sky. My pack guar had long since fled, and I decided I should do the same. I never stopped running until I reached Narcissus. I asked him if he knew what had happened in Vivec City. I didn't hear until much later that the Ministry of Truth had struck the heart of the city. What I do know for certain is that many Dunmer lost their lives that day, and that Vivec City is no more. Daros Dran, Mournhold. The Red Year didn't heavily affect Mournhold itself, but it touched many of the people who lived there. A lot of us had relatives somewhere on Vardenfell, and after the first day that the eruption occurred, we started receiving reports of widespread devastation in Vivec City, Sadrith Mora, Balmora, and Aldrune. I don't think a single night went by for months where you wouldn't hear someone openly weeping. It was a sad time for all of us. I asked if Mournhold had sustained any damage during the Red Year. I don't know why, but the destruction seemed to pass us by. A few Dunmer claimed that it was the Tribunal watching over us, but others claimed that the Tribunal was to blame for everything. I actually saw a few of those disagreements come to blows. It was a strange time. I got an interesting response from Daros regarding Mournhold's role during the Red Year. Relief efforts began almost a month after the mountain erupted. It was actually a directive that came from the House Redoran counselor that was living in Mournhold at the time. I can't remember his name, but he took charge of the situation and sent soldiers, supplies, and able-bodied Dunmer to the outlying settlements that had been hit the hardest. I was sent to Balmora. The place was a mess. Hardly anything left in town was still standing. I spent maybe 2 months there helping to rebuild the town and getting my fellow Dunmer back on their feet. It started out as a burden, but it ended up being the most rewarding thing I'd ever done in my life. I started some friendships there that still last to this day, including my beloved wife. There we go. Now we've actually chatted with everybody here and read all the books. So,
Another mouth to feed. You picked the wrong town to settle out.
let's check out the Allure house.
He'll set you up.
See what we can find in here. We're almost done in town, actually. Might seem shocking, but we really are close. Dearest Dinya. There's a note that we can read and remove from the book list. Excellent. Dearest Dinya, I know that your father doesn't approve of us, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make our relationship work. I think the time has come to speak to him in person and stop letting him hear about us through gossip and rumor. I love you, and I don't care if the entire world knows. Please think about it. Modin. So I think the note is meant to be addressed to Drayla, the woman who actually lives here. Modin, we haven't met yet, but he's the captain of the guard. And what do we have here? Ah, full set of the Poison Song. Well, let's read the other three. Might as well start with Volume 4. The Poison Song, Book 4, by Briston Zell. Akra sat by the hearth in Tay's room, reading her book by the fire. It concerned some minutiae of theosophy that she did not believe in, but nevertheless found morbidly compelling. When the door opened and she heard Tay enter, she finished the paragraph she was reading before looking up. I've been here for hours, darling. If I knew you were going to be so late, I would have brought more books, she giggled. When she saw Tay's face and the state of his clothing, her manner lost all frivolity. What happened to you? Are you all right? I've been to see my old childhood nursemaid, Ediba, he said in a strange voice. It was a sudden change of plans. I hadn't realized she was in Mournhold. I wish I had known where you were going, she said, rising slowly from her chair. I would have loved to have met her. Well, it's too late now. I've killed her. Akra inhaled deeply, studying Tay's frozen face. She took his hand. Perhaps you ought to tell me everything. Tay let his beloved lead him to the hearth, where he sat blinking at the fire. He looked down at the silver ring on his finger. Before I killed her, she gave me this. It's the sealing ring of the house Dagoth. She told me I was the bearer of the inheritance, and the song I hear all the time in my head, the one that called me to kill another boy when I was young, and then Ediba herself, is the song of my ancestors. Tay fell silent. Akra knelt by his side, stroking his ringed hand. Tell me more. My tutor, Kenna Gefrisi, taught us that the house Dagoth was a curse on Morrowind. He said that when they were all destroyed at the end of the war, the very earth itself breathed in relief. Tay closed his eyes. I can see the obliteration. I can even hear it in the song. Ediba told me that the 5 houses adopted the orphan children of Dagoth, raising them in their own traditions. I thought she was mad or a liar, but the real lie was all those years I thought my family was House Indoril. What are you going to do? Akra whispered. Well, Ediba told me to follow the song to my destiny, Tay laughed bitterly. But the song led me to kill her, so I don't know if she'd still give me that recommendation now. I know that I need to leave Mournhold. Before I knew what I was doing, I set a fire in her tenement. The guards were called. But I just don't know where I'd go. You have many friends to shield you if you prove yourself to be the new leader of the Return of the Sixth House. Akra kissed the ring. I will help you find them. Tay stared at her. Why would you help me? When you thought I was your cousin of the House Indoril, you did not mind having me, though it might well have been incestuous, Akra replied, meeting his eyes. I have heard the song, too. It is not as strong with me as it was with you, but I never chose to ignore it. It taught me more than the ridiculous temple priests and priestesses ever could. I knew that my true name was Dagoth Akra, and I knew that I had a brother. No, Tay said through gritted teeth. You're lying. You are Dagoth Tython. Tay shoved Akra hard against the wall and ran from the room. As he fled through the hall, he heard the sound of Kalkorith's footfall on the stairs behind him, a percussive instrument in the song that was rising in his heart and head. Cousin, the senior initiate was saying, have you heard about the fire? Tay unsheathed his dagger and turned, burying it to the hilt in Kalkorith's throat. Cousin, he hissed, I am not your cousin. The streets of Mournhold were lit by the red glow of the tenement fire, spreading through the tight alleyways by a steady and intense gust of wind. It was as if Dagoth Ur himself was looming over the city, fanning the flames his heir had struck. A house guard, running toward the blaze, stopped at the sight of Tay, standing uncertainly, swaying before the front door of Kalkorith's house, a bloodied blade in his hand. What you done, Serio? Tay ran for the forest, his cape whipping behind him by the force of the howling wind. The guard clambered after him, sword drawn. He had no need to investigate the house to see the murder. He knew. For hours, Tay raced through the wilderness, the song pushing him onward. The sound of his pursuer faded away. At last the trees thinned, and he saw nothing before him but air and water. A cliff, 100-foot-long plunge into the inner sea. The song told him no. It pulled him north, sweetly promising a place to rest among friends. More than friends, people who would worship him as the heir of Dagoth. As he slowly walked toward the edge of the cliff, the song became more threatening, warning him not to seek to avoid his fate. There was no escape in death. Tay spat a curse upon his house and threw himself head first over the cliff. It was another glorious day on the island of Gorn, the first one in weeks that Baynara could truly enjoy. Uncle Triffith had important company, housemen from far away, and she had been required to attend every dinner, every meeting, every ceremony. As a child, she remembered, she had hoped for some attention. Now nothing was more blissful than time away from her duties. There was only one thing she wanted to do that she had to do indoors, and that was writing a letter to her cousin. But that could wait until the evening, she told herself. After all, he had not written her in many days. It was the influence of that girl, Akra. Not that she seemed disagreeable, but Baynara knew how one's first love can be all-consuming. At least she had read about it. As she walked idly through the wildflower meadow, Baynara was so distracted with her thoughts that she did not hear her maid Hilima calling. She was quite startled when she turned to see the young servant running up. Serio, she said breathlessly, please come. Someone has washed up on the shore. It's your cousin, Serio Indoril Tay. Poison Song Book 5. Poison Song Book 5 by Briston Zell. For 2 days the house healers attended Tay in his bed, and Baynara sat by his side holding his hand. He was feverish, neither asleep nor awake, screaming at invisible phantoms. The healers complimented the young man's fortitude. Bodies had washed ashore on the island of Gorn several times, many during the war, but never once had they seen one that lived afterwards. Aunt Eulalia came in several times to bring Baynara food. You must be careful, dear. When he's all well, he'll have to attend you on your sick bed. Tay's fever broke, and at last he was able to open his eyes and see the young woman with whom he had spent 17 years, all but the first year of his life. She smiled at him and called for food. In silence she helped him eat. "I knew you wouldn't die, cousin," she whispered fondly. "I hoped to, but somehow I knew I wouldn't either," he groaned. "Baynara, do you remember all those nightmares I told you about? They're all true. We can talk about it when you've rested some more." "No," he croaked. "I must tell you everything now, so you'll know what kind of a monster you call your dear cousin Tay. If there was some way you could have known before, you might not have been so eager to see me again. See me well again." A tear rolled Baynara's cheek. She had grown into a beauty, even in the few months he had been away in Mournhold. "How can you think I would stop loving you, no matter what you've done?" I saw my old nursemaid Ediba and spoke to her. Oh, Baynara had feared this moment. "Tay, I don't know what she told you, but it was all my fault. You remember when Kenna Grafisi taught us about the House Dagoth and its corruption? That night I saw your nursemaid making some kind of altar out on the north lawn using the symbol of the sixth house. She must have been doing it for years, but I never knew what it meant. I told Uncle Triffith and he sent her away. I've wanted to tell you so many times now, but I was afraid to. She was so devoted to you." Tay smiled. "And didn't it frighten you even more to wonder if there was any connection between her devotion to me and her devotion to the accursed house? I know you, Baynara. You're not one of those women who doesn't choose to use her mind. Tay, I don't know what she told you, but I think she was very troubled, and whatever she thought about you in the sixth house was wrong. You have to remember that. The ramblings of one mad woman are proof of nothing." "There's more," Tay sighed, and held up his hand. For a moment he blinked, and then turned to Baynara angrily. "What happened to my ring? If you saw it, you must have known already that everything I'm saying to you is true." I threw the filthy thing away. Baynara stood up. "Tay, I'm going to let you rest now. I am the heir of House Dagoth." Tay was wild-eyed, almost screaming. "Raised after the war as House Induril, but driven by the song of my ancestors. When we were young, I killed Vaster because the song told me he had stolen my inheritance. When Ediba told me who I was and gave me this ring, I killed her and burned her house to the ground, because the song told me she had served her purpose. When I returned to Calcoreth's house, my love was there, telling me that she was of the House Dagoth too, and my sister. I fled, and when Calcoreth tried to stop me, I slew him, because the song told me he was an enemy." "Tay, stop," Baynara sobbed. "I don't believe a word of it. You've been feverish." "Not Tay," he shook his head, breathing heavily. "The name my parents gave me was Dagoth Tython. You can't have killed Ediba. You loved her. And Vaster and Calcoreth, they were our cousins." "They were not my true cousins," Tay said coldly. "The song told me they were my foes, just as it's telling me now that you're my foe, but I won't listen, and I'll keep from listening as long as I can." Baynara fled from the room, slamming the door behind her. She took a key from her startled maid Hilima and secured the lock. "Serio Induril Baynara," Hilima whispered with great sympathy. "Is all well with your cousin, Serio Induril Tay?" "He'll be perfectly fine once he rests." Baynara recovered her dignity, wiping the tears from her face. "No one is to disturb him under any circumstances. I'll take the key with me. Now I have much work to do. I don't suppose anyone's spoken to the fishermen about restocking Sandal House's supplies." "I don't know, Serio," said the maid. "I don't think so." Baynara marched down to the docks and relieved her troubled heart the only way she knew how, by concentrating on small things. Tay's words never left her, but she found temporary comfort talking to the fishermen about their haul, helping determine how much should be smoked, how much should be sent to the village, how much should be delivered fresh to the house larder. Her Aunt Eulalia joined the discussion, oblivious to Baynara's well-disguised agony. Together they discussed how many provisions Uncle Triffith and his commanders had devoured during their weeks on the island, when they would be expected to return, and how best to prepare. One of the fishermen on the docks called out, interrupting, "A boat is coming!" Eulalia and Baynara greeted the visitor as she arrived. It was a young woman dressed in the robes of a temple priestess. As she docked her small boat, Baynara marveled at how beautiful she was, and strangely familiar. "Welcome to Gorn," said Baynara. "I am Induril Baynara, and this is my aunt Induril Eulalia. Have we met before?" "I don't believe so, Serio," the woman bowed. "I was sent by the temple to inquire whether word had come from your cousin, Induril Tay. He has been missing from his classes for some days now, and the priests have become concerned." "Oh, we should have sent word," Eulia fretted. "He came here a few days ago, half drowned. He's better now. Let us escort you up to the house." "Tay's resting now, and I asked that he not be disturbed," Baynara stammered. "Actually, I know it's dreadful manners, but I need to talk to my aunt for a moment. Would it be too terrible if I asked you to wait for us at the house? You have only to follow the path up the hill and across the lawn." The priestess bowed again humbly and began the walk. Eulia was scandalized. "You know better than to treat a representative of the temple that way," she snapped. "You can't be so exhausted from tending your cousin to have lost all sense of civility." "Aunt Eulia," Baynara whispered, drawing the woman away from the ears of the fisherman, "is Tay truly my cousin? He believes himself to be of the house Dagoth." Eulia took a moment to respond. "It's true. You were just a baby yourself during the war, so you couldn't know what it was like. There was not a part of Morrowind that wasn't ravaged. There was even a battle here on the island. Do you remember that burned pile of wreckage you and Tay and poor little Vaster discovered so many years ago? That was the remains. And after the war, when that accursed house was finally defeated, we saw the little innocents, the orphans whose only crime had been born to wicked parents. I admit there were some in our armies, the combined forces of the houses, who would have had them all slaughtered to annihilate the legacy of Dagoth. In the end, compassion prevailed, and the children of the sixth house were adopted into the other five, and so we thought that we had won the war and the peace. By the Mother, Lord, and Wizard, if all that Tay believes is true, then there is no peace." Baynara trembled. "He claims that the song of his ancestors called to him and forced him to slay 3 people. 2 of them are housemen, Cousin Calcoreth and, when he was a little boy, Vaster." Eulia held her hands over her tearful face and could not speak. "And it is only beginning," said Baynara. "The song still calls to him. He said there were others who knew who would help him raise up the sixth house, his sister." "It must be an evil fantasy," Eulia murmured. She noticed that Baynara's gaze was now upon the path leading from the docks towards the house. "Niece, what are you thinking? Did that priestess give us her name?" The 2 women ran up the path calling for guards. The fishermen, who had never seen the mistresses of the house so undone, looked briefly at one another and then followed quickly behind, pulling out their hooks and blades. The front gate to Sandal House stood wide open, the first of the corpses lying close within. It was now an abattoir, painted fresh with blood. There was Aenor, Uncle Trifith's valet, gutted but still seated at the foyer table where he had been enjoying his afternoon glass of Flynn. Lorraine, one of the chambermaids, had been decapitated while carrying some once-clean linens up the stairs. The bodies of guards and servants sprawled about the hall like blown leaves. At the top of the stairs, Baynara had to hold back a sob when she saw Hilima. She lay like a broken doll, slain as she tried to pull herself out onto the narrow window ledge. No one spoke, not Baynara, nor Aunt Eulia, nor the fisherman, as they walked slowly through the blood-drenched house. They passed Tay's sick room, its door broken open, and no one within. When they heard the sound of footsteps in Baynara's room down the hall, they approached slowly, cautiously, with great dread. The priestess from the docks was standing by the bed. In her hand was the silver ring Baynara had taken from Tay's finger. In her other hand was a long, curved blade, splashed like her once pristine gown with gore. She smiled prettily and bowed when she saw she was no longer alone. "Acra, I should have recognized you by Tay's description in his letters," Baynara said in her steadiest voice. "Where is my cousin?" "I prefer to call myself Dagoth, Acra," she replied. "Your false cousin, my true brother, has already gone to fulfill his destiny. I'm sorry you were not here so he could give you a more permanent farewell." Baynara's face twisted in fury. She motioned for the fishermen who advanced with their weaponry. "Tear her apart. The sixth house will rise again and Dagoth Tython will lead us," Acra laughed. Her words were still echoing as she gave the sign of recall and vanished like a ghost. Steal the coin purse, and finally, the Poison Song, Book 7. Final one. The Poison Song, Book 7 by Briston Zell. Trifith stood on the parapets of Beresamane and considered the volcano. Metaphors the poets used fell rather flat in his view. A festering wound it could be called with its blood-like lava. The King of Ash, too, could be applied when one looked at its perpetual crown of smoke. And yet none of that would do, for nothing in his experience could convey the sheer magnitude of the mountain. Red Mountain was many miles away from the fortress, and yet it filled the horizon utterly. Before he could feel too small, however, he heard his name being called within. It was some consolation that though he was insignificant compared to the mountain, he was still in possession of certain power and influence. General Indral Triffitt, said Commander Rail, there's trouble at the East Gate. The trouble was scarcely more than a skirmish. An Ashlander, drunk perhaps on shine, had begun a fight with the house guards at the back gate. As they tried to drive him away, his cousins joined him, and soon there were 6 Ashlanders altogether brawling with a dozen of Triffitt's guards. If the Inwas had not been well armed, the fight could have been finished almost before it began. As it was, by the time the general arrived with more of his guards, 2 of the Ashlanders were dead, and the others had taken flight. It's the smoke in their brains, Rail shrugged. Makes them mad. Triffitt climbed back up the stairs and returned to his chamber to dress for dinner. General Redoran Vorelk and Councillor Hlalu Nathok would be arriving very shortly to discuss the temple's plans for reorganizing the houselands of Morrowind. Mournhold was to be renamed Almalexia. A great new city in honor of Vivek was to be built, but with whose gold? It made his head hurt. There were so many details, a long night of argument, threats, and compromises were ahead. The general's mind was so occupied that he nearly put his house robes on backwards. He also did not notice the shadowy figure steal out from behind the tapestry and close the door to the bedchamber. It was not until Triffitt heard the sound of the latch bolt fall that he turned around. Slipped in when I was distracted by the fracas at the back gate. Very clever, Tay, he said simply. Or do you call yourself Dagoth Tython these days? You should know all my names, the young man snarled, unsheathing his sword. I was Tython before you butchered my family and sought to dispel my tribe. I was Tay when you brought me into your house to poison me against my own people. Now you may call me Vengeance. There was a knock on the door. Tython and Triffitt did not move their eyes from one another. The knocking became a loud pounding. General Indral Triffitt, are you well? Is there something wrong? If you're going to kill me, boy, you'd best do it quickly, Triffitt growled. My men will have that door down in 2 minutes. You don't tell me what to do, Uncle, Tython shook his head. I have the song of my ancestors to instruct me. It tells me you made my father beg for his life before you killed him, and I want to see you do the same. If your ancestors are all-knowing, Triffitt smiled, why are they all dead? Tython made an inhuman noise in the back of his throat and advanced. The door began to buckle at the pounding, but it was sturdy and secure. The general's estimate of its life expectancy at 2 minutes seemed clearly erroneous. The pounding suddenly stopped. A familiar voice replaced the sound. Tay, called Baynara, listen to me. Tython smirked. You're just in time to hear your uncle beg for his miserable life, cousin. I was afraid you'd be too late. The next sound you'll hear will be the death rattle of the man who slaved my house. The song is what's enslaved you, not Uncle Triffitt. You can't trust it. It's poisoning you. It lets you be manipulated first by that mad old woman, and now by that evil witch Akra, who calls herself your sister. Tython pressed the tip of his sword so it touched the general's throat. The older man stepped backwards, and Tython advanced. His eyes followed the length of his arm to the grip of the blade. The silver ring of Dagoth caught the red light of the volcano from the battlements outside the window. Tay, please don't hurt anyone anymore. Please, if you just listen to me and not the song, just a moment, you'll know what's right. I love you. Baynara stifled her sobs to keep her voice clear and calm. There was a noise on the stairwell behind her. The general's guard had finally arrived with the battering ram. The door splintered and burst open in 2 strikes. General Indral Triffitt was holding his throat, staring out the window. Uncle, are you all right? Baynara ran to him. He nodded his head slowly and removed his hand. There was only the barest of scratches on his neck. Where's Tay? He jumped out the window, said Triffitt, pointing out into the distance where a figure was riding a guar toward the volcano. I thought he was going to kill himself, but he had an escape figured out. We'll get him, Serio General, said Commander Rail, calling to the guards to get their mounts. Baynara watched them go and then kissed her uncle quickly and ran out to her own guar in the courtyard. Sweat drenched Tay's body as he rode closer and closer toward the summit of Red Mountain. The guar was breathing hard, trudging along even more slowly, letting out little grunts of complaint about the heat. Finally, he abandoned his steed and began to climb the near vertical surface. Ash blew down the face of the volcano into his eyes. Near blind, it was almost impossible to ignore the persistent, clamorous notes of the song. A silken stream of crimson lava studded with crystalline formations surged a few feet away, close enough that Tay could feel his flesh begin to burn and blister. He turned from it and saw a figure emerge through the smoke, Baynara. What are you doing, Tay? She cried over the howl of the volcano. Didn't I tell you not to listen to the song? For the first time, the song and I both want the same thing, he yelled back. I can't ask you to forgive me, but please try to forget. He pulled himself higher, out of Baynara's sight. She screamed his name, scaling the rocks until she found she was close to the open crater. Waves of boiling gas washed over her, and she dropped to her knees, gasping. Through the rippling miasma, she saw Tay standing at the mouth of the volcano. Flames erupted from his clothes and hair. He turned to her just for a moment and smiled. Then he leapt. Baynara was in a daze as she began the long, treacherous climb down the volcano. She began to think of the projects ahead. Were there enough provisions and storage at her house in Gorn for the meeting of the houses? The counselors were bound to stay there for weeks, maybe months. There was much work to be done. Slowly, as she descended, she began to forget. It would not last, but it would be a start. Dagoth Akra stood as near to the mouth of the volcano as she could stand, blinking her eyes at the ash, soaked by the heat. She watched all and smiled. On the ground was the silver ring with the seal of the House Dagoth. Tython had been sweating so much it had slipped off. She picked it up and put it on her own finger. Touching her belly, she heard a new refrain of the poison song of Morrowind begin. Oh, there you go. Now that, I think, is almost all of the new books, besides, more particular journals and what have you, that we get as part of the Dragonborn expansion. There's a copy of Hallgerd's Tale, the heavy armor skill book we've read before. The Axeman. Yep. All is well so far. Let's check a few more things out. Bone Part 1, yes, we've read that. We've read the History of Raven Rock. We've read the House of Troubles. It's not actually all, but it is pretty close. Alright, let's head back out. And let's head now into the Retching Netch Tavern. This last building here on the marketplace. Alright, let's look around. Here is Drovus Relvi. Let's talk to him.
Welcome to the Retching Netch Corner Club, my lord. If you need anything, Master Geldis will be happy to help you. We have all sorts of authentic dark elf food and drink here. Geldis spares no expense. Geldis may be a tough boss, but I can put up with it. Keeps a roof over me head. I don't mind working at the Retching Netch, but I was hoping for a bit more when I moved to Solstheim. Oh well.
Oh shoot, now what was that last line we missed? I'll pull it up. In the meantime, do you know someone called Mirak?
Did I know someone by that name? Someone that wanted something.
What did he want?
Maybe I'm just confused. I can't be sure.
Okay. The last line we missed was, there's got to be more to life than sweeping and cleaning all day. Over here is a hireling, just like most of the major city inns. Teldrin Sero can be hired to accompany you.
Blade for hire. If you have the coin, I'm at your service. The best swordsman in all Morrowind is at your service. For the right price. Don't pass up on this opportunity, Outlander. I'm worth every coin. I've got swords, spells, and a few other tricks up my sleeve. You'll find I'm full of surprises. Sirrah?
Don't actually need to hire him, though. Let's head downstairs. Eyeball the room, but mainly interested in...
Welcome to the Retching Netch Corner Club, home of the finest Sue Jammer that will ever grace your lips.
Mostly interested in chatting with Geldis Sadri, the barkeep.
Welcome to the Retching Netch, Outlander. What can I get you? If you're looking for a room or perhaps some libations, you've come to the right place. I know everyone in Raven Rock, and they know me. You want stories? I've got plenty. I've seen many visitors come and go, but you, there's something about you that I like. And what might you need?
So what's the specialty of the house?
The finest sujama to cross your lips, friend. My own personal formula that I call Sadri's Sujama. In fact, I've just added some new ingredients to the mixture that I think makes it taste better than ever. All I need to do is get the word out that it's ready, and they'll flock here for it.
I could help spread the word.
I was kind of hoping you'd say that. Here, take these samples of the Sujama and spread the word. If you get rid of all of them, there's something extra in it for you.
Distribute Sadri's Sujama, 0 out of 10. Your inn has an unusual name.
There's actually a funny story behind the name, friend. A few years ago, I was walking down by the docks, and I noticed a Dunmer staggering along with a bottle of Sujama in hand. He was one of my patrons who liked to drink heavily, so I wasn't exactly surprised.
Doesn't sound unusual.
But you see, this particular Dunmer was as naked as the day he was born, and singing badly at the top of his lungs. As I'm watching this spectacle, a netch floats over the bulwark towards him. The man looks straight up at the netch, yells, "Have a drink," and tosses the bottle. And it never hit the ground.
What did the netch do?
Well, the bottle broke on the netch, and it must have swallowed its contents because it started floating sort of tilted. Finally, it stopped and began to quiver. A few moments later, the foulest liquid to ever assail your nostrils spewed from its maw. I've seen plenty of drunks in me day, and I'll tell you right now, that netch was sick.
Now I get it.
True story, friend. True story.
Heard any rumors lately?
With the mine shut down, there's no telling how much longer Raven Rock's going to last. Hopefully, Councillor Morvain has a plan.
Heard any rumors lately?
I heard crazy old Cressius has been sneaking into Raven Rock mine again. At his age, he's going to get himself killed in there.
Heard any rumors lately?
If you've got gold on your hands, you might talk to Rallis of the Colbjorn Barrow. I've heard he wants to excavate the place.
Speak to Rallis Sedaris at Colbjorn Barrow.
Safe travels, Outlander.
Sure. See, we're racking up quests again. It's a full-size expansion in the way Dawnguard and Hearthfire never thought about being. Alright, nothing back here. That's good. We'll deal with that in a second. Let's hand out some Sujama. I bet Sindiri will take one.
Wife to the second councillor of Raven Rock, it would be my pleasure to help you any way that I can.
Geldis Sadri wants you to try his new drink.
Oh, how kind. Thank Geldis for me, won't you?
Distribute 1 out of 10.
My husband is second councillor, so I certainly have the means to reward you if you find my folio.
Let's check the rest of this joint out. The reclamations we've read. I think this is the room you can sleep in if you rent a bed. Over here we've got History of Raven Rock, which of course we've also already read. Let's head back here. Another chest. This one's empty. This must be the sleeping room. There's another copy of Deathbrand. This one. Here we go. I think there was something I missed in the lore house. I need to go back in there. Anyway, before we do anything else, let's go ahead and hand out the Sujama samples.
Welcome to the Retching Netch Corner Club, my lord. If you need anything, Master Geldis will be happy to help you.
Geldis Sadri wants you to try his new drink.
Sorry, Geldis won't allow me to drink while I'm working at the Netch.
Oh, alright. How about you, Teldrin?
Teldrin Serro, Blade for
Nope.
hire. If you have the coin. This may be the frontier, but we've still got rules.
Mogrel?
I'll give you this warning only once. Stay out of my way, and we'll do just fine.
Yeldis Sadri wants you to try his new drink.
Take that swill and pour it down a well.
All right.
Slitter?
I work for Mo.
Nope.
You got a problem, you talk to him.
Alright. Drayla?
Miserable. This island's nothing but a pile of rubble. What's the point trying to make a life here?
Yeldis Sadri wants you to try his new drink.
At least my father will let me drink whatever I want without complaining. Tell Geldis I appreciate it.
2 out of 10.
Keep yourself safe. Solstine's still a dangerous place.
Fethis?
To buy anything, or just laugh at our misfortunes?
Yeldis Sadri wants you to try his new drink.
Geldis needs to bottle this up and send it to the mainland instead of wasting his time out here. His drinks are outstanding. Thanks.
3 out of 10.
East Empire pendants are scattered all...
Let's head back in here just because I'm pretty sure I missed something.
It's time. You're not supposed to be here.
Needed to let him finish talking. I hate that silly little glitch. That's alright.
I'd be on the first ship
Let's
off this island.
give it to Adril.
Your visit here will be tolerated.
Yeldis Sadri wants you to try his new drink.
What? Oh, no, thank you. I need to keep my head clear.
Fine, let's give it to Garen Ienth.
Welcome to Raven Rock, traveler.
Yeldis Sadri wants you to try his new drink.
Always a pleasure to taste anything Geldis comes up with.
4 out of 10.
Next time you're hungry, stop by. I will
Milore.
give you food.
Looking for any potions?
Geldis Sadri wants you to try his new drink.
I should mix some of this into my next potion. Who knows what would happen?
5 out of 10.
With those niches.
Glover.
Find my pickaxe yet?
Geldis Sadri wants you to try his new drink.
Perfect. I was just thinking about heading over for a drink. Thanks for saving me the trip.
6 out of 10.
Tell Crushes he better give that pickaxe back to me, or else.
Alright, now let's try the Allure House again. Yes, here they are. First, second, and third letter from East Empire Company, or EEC. Let's read all 3 of them, take them off the notes list. First letter from EEC. Fethis, after reviewing your rather lengthy letter in which you've requested that the East Empire Company purchase your business on Solstheim, we must respectfully decline. The East Empire Company has been doing business in Tamriel for over 5 centuries, and in that time we've had numerous business ventures. Some of those ventures have proven lucrative, and some were highly unprofitable. The colony of Raven Rock belongs to the latter, I'm afraid, and therefore we see no financial advantage in re-establishing any sort of business venture on Solstheim at this time. Vittoria Vici, East Empire Company Warehouse, Solitude, Skyrim. Let's find the second one. Second letter from EEC. Fethis, I felt I was rather clear in my last letter that the East Empire Company doesn't wish to engage in any sort of financial buyout of your business on Solstheim. We appreciate your enthusiasm, but the time just isn't right. Vittoria Vici, East Empire Company Warehouse, Solitude, Skyrim. And third letter from EEC. Fethis, we've received yet another letter from you requesting a buyout. At this time, I'm going to have to insist you cease any communication with the East Empire Company. There will be no further letters from me on this matter. Vittoria Vici, East Empire Company Warehouse, Solitude, Skyrim. I had almost forgotten those. Anyway, let's
My wife and I are doing the best we can to keep Raven Rock fed.
let's explore the last couple of buildings in town. There's an abandoned building, which is currently unoccupied, although we will have occupants later. Let me just look around. We've read the 5 far stars. Is there anything up here? No, there's not. Well, that was pretty easy. Let's go check Severin Manor now. And here's Vendel.
Always glad to help, Serio. What can I do for you?
Geldis Sadri wants you to try his new drink.
Not today. Too many things on my mind.
Fine.
Pleasant journey, Serio.
Let's check out Severin Manor. We can talk to Miri.
It gets lonely out here, you know, on this remote island.
Geldis Sadri wants you to try his new drink.
Well, tell Geldis that Miri says she really appreciates it.
7 out of 10.
And don't stay away for too long.
We've read up both of those. Here's Talisu.
My husband Bendel feared visitors would shun Raven Rock. I'm glad to see he was mistaken.
Geldis Sadri wants you to try his new drink.
Sure, got nothing better to do.
8 out of 10.
May your path be free from danger.
Let's go downstairs right quick.
Town bores me. How much longer must we stay in this wretched place?
If everything goes well, we won't have to stay here much longer. For now, we wait.
What am I supposed to do until then?
We've read those.
I don't know. Look for someone else to hop into bed with, perhaps.
Read those. We'll just keep going one direction. I think that's pretty easy in terms of navigation. A lot of alchemy ingredients here. Ah, burnt spriggan wood. That is a new ingredient. Let's just eat one and learn all the effects. Weakness to fire, fortify alteration, damage magicka regen, and slow. Very good. There's trauma roots, which we've already found. Spawn ash, we've already found. Ash hopper jelly, that's another new one. So let's eat it and take it off the list. Restore health, fortify light armor, resist shock, and weakness to frost. Ash hopper jelly is off the list. Outstanding. Only 3 more ingredients in the entire game, and then I'm completely done with that little aspect. Which is excellent. Excellent indeed. Don't think there's anything else in here exactly, so let's move on. It's a hell of a house. Strange things in it, too. Severin Family Safe has an expert lock on it. We already know Conjure Flame Atronach. Nothing we need in any of those either. Nothing important around the Altar of Enchanting. Alright. We've explored everything in town now except for the Raven Rock Mine. Before we get around to that, let's hand out the last couple of drinks. I think Laryl will take one.
I trust you're not planning any trouble. What can I do?
Anything you can contribute to Raven Rock will be greatly appreciated. And rewarded appropriately, of course.
Geldis Sadri wants you to try his new drink.
Good old Geldis is always managing to keep our spirits
How
up.
much longer do you
And
intend
our
to
eyesight hazy. Thank you.
The Redoran Council tasked me with keeping...
9 out of 10.
Which I've done without question.
Okay, let's try the sailors.
Fate, you picked the wrong town to settle, Outlander.
Galland and his two buddies.
Aye.
Nope.
May the wind be at your back.
Captain Gallen does the business.
Nope.
Talk to Captain Gallen. Looking to book passage.
Nope. Well, shoot, we've talked to everybody, or close to everybody then. Maybe the two guys in the temple. It would surprise me, although I guess it wouldn't be totally unheard of. Elder Othroloff.
Though our spirits may be low
Nope.
and danger lurks beyond the light, I am confident that they... Excuse me, but the temple is for followers of our faith alone. Outsiders aren't welcome here.
Geldis Sadri wants you to try his new drink.
Get that vile liquid away from me.
Huh.
Non-believers are never welcome here.
And well, we've checked with everyone we've talked to so far. So we need at least one of the folks we haven't found yet. Fair enough. As there's nobody in the bulwark yet, so... Before we head into the Raven Rock mine, let's gather up the East Empire Company pendants that are here in Raven Rock. There are a few. There's one here in the Alor house. Yes, we'll steal his own pendant and sell it to him. That is how we roll. Just grab the East Empire pendant. Oops. Got turned around. There's another inside the retching natch.
I work for Mogrel. You got a problem, you talk to him.
There's one in Glover Mallory's house.
Find my pick.
There's one in Morvain Manor.
Glover Mallory's the name. If you're looking for a smith, you found one of the best.
Can I help you?
It's up in the chambers. There it is. There's one in the Caerelius house.
If you need a ride back to the mainland, Gallen's the only way off this rock.
There's one inside the bulwark. There's one inside the temple ancestral tomb.
You can go where you please, but I'd stay inside for bold if I were you.
Can't remember exactly where, though. There it is. Blew right past it that first time. And the last one that's in town, they're all over the island, but the last one in town is actually underneath the Northern Maiden, the ship we arrived on. Let's go for a little swim. However briefly.
Excuse me, but the temple is for followers of our faith.
So we can nip down here. Just gotta swim around a bit till I find it. There it is. There we go. 8 East Empire pendants can be found here in town. So let's go sell them to Thethys.
If it wasn't for the bull, we'd be digging our houses out beneath the ash.
Oh, I could have sworn he'd be in here somewhere. Must be in the retching niche. Guess it's that time of night. Yes, yes.
Cat?
Alright, here. There he is.
Want to buy anything, or just laugh at our misfortunes?
Still buying East Empire pendants?
I'm beginning to like this partnership. Here you go.
8 removed, 4,000 gold added.
Need any supplies? You know where to find me.
Alrighty. Now let's head over and finally do what Adral first told us to do and investigate the Earthstone over here to the west. It is clearable, actually, but not yet. Not for us. We lack the means to get the enemies we need to kill to spawn. So for the moment, we'll just visit the 3 people who are out here. The Earthstone is discovered. We'll come back and clear it later. But we can visit with a couple of NPCs while we're here, although they won't say much to us.
Here do we toil, that we might remember. By night we reclaim what by day was stolen, far from ourselves. He grows ever near to us. Our eyes once were blinded. Now through him do we see. Our hands once were idle. Now through them does he speak. And when the world shall listen, and when the world shall see, and when the world remembers, that world will cease to be. Here in his shrine.
So they all just say that liturgy over and over again. Here's Rern's Lervu. So these two live in the abandoned house when they're not out here working on the shrine.
Here do we toil,
Which, as you can see, is
that we might remember.
actually somewhat unsettling.
We reply.
There's still no ash creep clusters around, which is what I'm looking for. There's one unaffected NPC over here, however, and he actually appeared in Morrowind and is back in this game, still alive, still kicking, a couple of centuries later. It's Neloth.
You there. You don't seem to be in quite the same state as the others here. Very interesting. May I ask what it is you're doing here?
I'm looking for someone named Mirak.
Mirak. It sounds familiar, and yet I can't quite place... Oh, wait, I recall. But that makes very little sense. Mirak's been dead for thousands of years.
What does that mean?
I'm not sure, but it is fascinating, isn't it? Perhaps it has some relation to what's going on here. Quite unexpected. I'm afraid I can't give you any answers, but there are ruins of an ancient temple of Mirax toward the center of the island. If I were you, I'd look there.
What are these people doing?
Building something, clearly, and yet they don't seem to have much to say about it. I'm very interested to find out what happens when they finish.
Have you tried to stop this?
Certainly not. Doing so would interfere with whatever is going on, and I would be unable to see how this all turns out.
What can you tell me about Morrowind?
The ignorant think it is only a place of ash and lava. It has rolling green plains and swamps and verdant hills, too.
What can you tell me about Morrowind?
There is the big island of Ardenfell and the coastal mainland. House Telvanni has its properties on Vardenfell. I've never been to the mainland myself.
What can you tell me about Morrowind?
You are too young to remember the Nerevarine. He defeated Dagorhur and saved us all from the Blight.
So there it is. The Nerevarine, your hero in Morrowind, is canonically male. There you go. What can you tell me about Morrowind?
It's the homeland of the Dunmer. The lesser races call us Dark Elves. We built great works there, like Vivek and Aldrul. Many of them are destroyed now, either by Red Mountain or the Argonian invasion.
What can you tell me about Morrowind?
When the city of Vivek was destroyed, it took decades for us to rebuild. We are still but a shadow of our glorious past, but someday we will rise again.
What can you tell me about Morrowind?
Red Mountain dominates the island. Every now and then, ash and debris from an eruption land on our shores.
What can you tell me about Morrowind?
It is the only place where silt striders can be found. Although I managed to transplant a few here when I arrived.
Alrighty.
Are we done? I thought so.
Let's get his one-liners.
The ash from Red Mountain holds secrets. Secrets I mean to uncover.
Alright, there we go.
That's that then.
So let's have a quick look at the stone. These stones featured prominently in Blood Moon, but you can see that now it's mostly encased in whatever that weirdness is.
That seems inadvisable. Oh, fascinating. By touching the stone, you appear to have fallen under whatever influence is affecting the others. I wonder how long this effect will last. Perhaps it is permanent with others.
Our eyes once were blinded.
That would be a shame.
Now
You are an interesting exception. Otherwise, universal phenomenon.
Now through them does he speak.
And when the world shall listen.
Can you hear me? Do you have any free
when the
will
world
left?
remembers.
Or are you completely under this outside influence like the others?
That world will cease to be.
It appears that you were not as unusual
That you
after.
have forgotten. That you might remember.
You can stop.
So you are
Why
able to
not
resist
be
the
required?
effect by exerting your will. Fascinating. I would not advise touching the stone again. The effects of repeated contact could be...
Far from
Unless, of course, you'd like to contribute to my investigation. It could be very enlightening to observe you.
he grows ever near to us.
All right. So there you go. Now,
Our eyes once were blinded.
we're going to enter the Raven Rock Mine just north of town. There are a couple more people in there. They'll talk to each other, and then we can, in turn, talk to them. Here we are in the Raven Rock Mine.
Damn it, woman. I said to leave me be.
Cretius, last time you explored the mine, you almost fell to your death. I'm not spending the rest of my days as a widow.
And I'm telling you that I'll do whatever it takes to my great-grandfather's remains. He's down here. I can feel it.
That was almost 2 centuries ago. There may be nothing left to find.
Just let me go, woman.
Cretius, you're an obstinate old fool, and you're going to get yourself killed.
So here's Aphia Velothi.
My apologies for Cretius's ravings.
Geldis Sadri wants you to try his new drink.
Oh, that sounds lovely. Thank you.
There we go. 10 out of 10. Completed. Distribute Sadri's Sajama. Tell Geldis Sadri you've distributed his liquor samples. What were you arguing with Cretius about? Well, let's get her one-liners first.
Be careful out there.
Oh yeah. What were you arguing with Cretius about?
Foolish old man thinks he's 30 years younger than he is. He's going to get himself killed traipsing around the mine.
Why is he exploring the mine?
He's convinced himself that there's some sort of conspiracy involving the East Empire Company and the mine's closure. We came across some old letters that belonged to his great-grandfather in our house, and he believes every word written in them.
What did the letters say?
Cretius's great-grandfather worked for the East Empire Company. The letters mention some sort of discovery he was sent to investigate. There's really nothing remarkable in the letters. I don't know what he's so excited about.
Who was Cretius's great-grandfather?
Gratian Corellius. He was an explorer for the East Empire Company. They'd send him all over Tamriel when they had difficulties in a mining operation. Poor man. Can you imagine doing all that dangerous work just to end up dying at your own doorstep?
Gratian is a character in Morrowind as well. What happened to
It
him?
was a horrible accident, and he was killed when one of the tunnels collapsed. They were never even able to go down there and recover the body. The East Empire Company sealed that section off to prevent any more tragedies. Cretius is convinced it's a story cooked up by the company to cover up something else, but I don't know.
You don't agree with Cretius?
My beloved is almost 80 years old, and I think the shock of finding one of his ancestors' things has left his mind a bit I love him dearly, and I support everything he does. But I can't let him chase this silly idea, or he may end up joining Gratian in a rocky grave.
Do you know someone called Mirak?
I think so, but from where? I can't recall.
Try to remember.
It's difficult. Something about it doesn't feel right. A temple here on the island. That's all I can recall.
How did you meet Cretius?
To understand how we met one another, you have to appreciate what he's going through. Cretius is a third-generation miner. All his life, he's lived and breathed nothing else. By the time Cretius came of age, the ebony mine in Raven Rock was shut down. He took that quite hard.
Why didn't he move somewhere else to find work?
Our home has been in his family for over 200 years. Leaving would have been like abandoning precious memories. Instead, he stayed on Solstheim and spent most of his life prospecting for a new ebony source. Sadly, it never surfaced. A decade ago, this drove him into a deep depression. He shut himself inside his home and refused to come out.
This is where you met?
It was. After refusing to allow anyone to bring him food, Counselor Morvain ordered his door to be knocked down before Cretius starved to death. I was a temple priest at the time, and they had me use my healing arts to restore strength to his ailing body. I stayed for a while and cared for him, then I suppose we fell in love.
You're a priest at the temple?
Far from it. In fact, I'm no longer welcome there.
Why?
In all honesty, it came down to a disagreement between what I believe and what Elder Othraloth believes. I'd prefer not to get into the details, but let's just say our opinions about the current status of the tribunal vary widely.
Fair enough.
Be careful out there.
Okay.
Be
Now
careful
let's...
out there.
Does he have anything I need to pickpocket? No. Let's just chat with
Keep your
him.
hands to your... Who in the blazes are you? Can't you see I'm busy?
Busy doing what?
Why should I tell you? I don't even know who you are.
Perhaps I could help.
Maybe. Been difficult trusting people lately. They think I'm crazy. But mark my words, these mines hold a secret that could put Raven Rock back on the map.
What's started the final descent? Speak to Cretius Corellius. What sort of a secret would be hidden here?
A secret the East Empire Company swept under the rug 2 centuries ago. It killed my great-grandfather and left Raven Rock with a worthless and tainted mine.
Who was your great-grandfather?
Gratian Corellius. He spent his entire life exploring ancient ruins across Tamriel, and he died in these very mines almost 200 years ago.
How did he die?
The East Empire Company called it a terrible accident, claiming that he was lost in a rockfall, but I know better.
What's your proof?
My wife and I were cleaning out our home, and we came across some of my great-grandfather's things locked in an old chest. I found an unsent letter he'd written to the East Empire Company, and a key.
What did the letter say?
It describes a discovery that was made in the mine by some of the diggers. They wanted Gratian to take a closer look. The East Empire Company must have felt it was of great value, as they locked that section of the mine off from everyone else.
The key is to the locked section?
It is. Well, I assume it is. I haven't been able to find the entrance.
I admit this does sound suspicious.
Finally, someone who believes me. I'm telling you, there's something big down there. Something that the East Empire Company wanted to hide from everyone.
Why are you telling me all of this?
My wife nags that I'm too old to go traipsing around these mines chasing my story. Time's my enemy. It's caught up with me before I could find the answers that I'm looking for.
So you do need my help.
I do. I want to know what happened to Gratian, and what the East Empire Company's keeping from all of us.
Any idea of where to start?
Gratian kept a journal of notes about his discoveries. If you can find his remains, I'm hoping it will help. Here's everything I have. The letter, the key. Please, do this for me, so I can finally regain the respect that I've lost.
Completed. Speak to Cretius Corellius. Ravenrock Mine key added. Gratian's letter added. Retrieve Gratian Corellius's journal. Are you sure Gratian's death wasn't an accident?
Look, I know I don't have much to go on. I have that unsent letter, and that's really it. But I also have a miner's instinct that's run in my family from before Gratian was even born. I may sound like a crazy old man to you, but I'm telling you, the tunnels here are solid. They would never collapse like that.
Why were you arguing with Athia?
She thinks that old age has addled my mind, that I'm seeing things when there's nothing to be seen. I realize she cares about me, but she has to understand that I can't rest until I find out what happened to Gratian.
What if she's right and I don't find anything?
I'll settle down peacefully and never set foot in this mine again. I've been waiting for this moment for a long time, even before I discovered Gratian's old things. I just hope both of you don't mistake my enthusiasm for insanity.
Glover wants his ancient Nordic pickaxe back.
The damn fool doesn't even deserve to have it. The pickaxe was made for mining, not selling. I'll bet he stole it from the Skull in the first place.
It doesn't belong to you.
Oh, very well. Here. Tell him I hope he drops the thing on his foot.
Ancient Nordic pickaxe added. Return ancient Nordic pickaxe to Glover Mallory. Do you know someone called Mirak?
I recognize the name, but I don't know how I know it. It sounds so familiar.
Tell me anything you can.
It's so strange. I feel like it's from a dream. Something about the Earthstone and a shrine. That's it. That's all I can think of. Be careful down there. The mine can be treacherous.
Let's get one-liners, too.
Try the lower sections of the mine. I've never been able to get that far.
Okay.
Be careful down there.
Why you're leading Cretius on, I'll never understand.
I'm guessing you don't agree with Cretius's story.
Cretius is aging, and I believe it's addled his mind. As the years have passed, it's gotten worse. He's become obsessed with his theories of conspiracy.
Then where's his great-grandfather?
I'm sure he's down there somewhere, buried under a mountain of rubble like the East Empire Company claims. My greatest fear is that my stubborn mule of a husband will end up suffering the same fate.
Okay, fair enough.
Be careful out there.
Alright, so let's look at the journal. We've got the final descent. I've stumbled across Cretius Corellius inside of Ravenrock Mine. He's convinced that the remains of his great-grandfather, Gratian Corellius, are at the bottom of the mine, and that the East Empire Company has falsely designated his ancestor's death as an accident. He's tasked me with exploring the mine on his behalf to locate the remains, and perhaps discovering what killed Gratian Corellius. Alright, now before we head into the mine, let's go tidy things up out here a little bit. First, we'll go visit Glover Mallory. Oh, looks like everybody's together in the retching netch anyway. That's perfect. So we can give, well, no, looks like Glover's not in here. Oh, we'll talk to Geldis.
Welcome to the Retching Netch Corner Club, home of the finest sujamma that will ever grace your lips.
I've given out the Sadri's Sujamma as requested.
Perfect. All that's left now is to go ahead and wait for the patrons to come in. As promised, here's a little something for yourself.
2,000 gold added. Completed. Tell Geldis Sadri you've distributed his liquor samples. which completes a miscellaneous quest called It's All in the Taste, which I can now remove from the list. Heard any rumors lately?
The Ashborn attacks on the bulwark are getting worse. Captain Veleth is trying his best, but I think the Redoran Guard are overwhelmed. Come back if you're feeling thirsty. I'll set you up right.
Alright, so where is Glover? He's obviously not in here, so probably inside his house. We may have to wait until morning to turn... Oh! No, he is at the Earthstone. That's right. Almost everybody.
Serve House Redoran or serve no one.
So this is an interesting thing to see, actually. If you come out at night, almost everybody in town joins the others working over here at the mine. See, there's Sindiri Arano. There's Glover Mallory. Fethus Alor. Garen Ienth. They're all here. Alright, so let's wait until morning. That's when people return to normal.
Here in his shrine.
Here we go.
Find my pickaxe yet?
I have your ancient Nordic pickaxe.
So, you finally tracked down old Cretius, eh? Quite a character, isn't he? Tell you what, since you went through all the trouble of finding it for me and all, you keep it.
After all that, why?
I just wanted to remind that codger you can't just go around taking things from other people. Now that you've delivered the message, I'm satisfied. Besides, that pickaxe hasn't done me any good in years. Maybe you can put it to good use.
Completed, return ancient Nordic pickaxe to Glover Mallory, which completes a miscellaneous quest called An Axe to Find. And now, of course, we have the ancient Nordic pickaxe, and when we find it, we'll be able to harvest Stalrim. So...
blades, helmets, pretty much anything to suit your needs.
It's finally time to sell our old standard pickaxe, and we will favorite the ancient Nordic pickaxe instead. Let's read Gratian's letter and take it off of our book list. Gratian, I would appreciate if you could help us with the situation we've encountered in Raven Rock. It seems that the miners there have stumbled across some sort of ruins under the surface near Shaft 3, and we need your expertise to take a look. I could send someone else if you're busy, but I figured you'd want to go since I seem to recall that you're originally from Solstheim. Let us know if you make any progress. Rendelis Thandarian, East Empire Company, Imperial City, Cyrodiil.
Weapons and armor to me. I'll fix it up right.
So there we go. I have about 15 minutes left, so we can at least get started trucking through the Raven Rock mine. No enemies as yet, but let's do have Aura Whisper on. Let's look around this room first. Here's a copy of a new book, which appeared in Morrowind, but is fresh now in this one, Lives of the Saints. Lives of the Saints. If you would be wise, model your lives on the lives of the saints. If you would learn valor, follow Saint Nerevar the Captain, patron of warriors and statesmen. Lord Nerevar helped to unite the barbarian Dunmer tribes into a great nation, culminating in his martyrdom when leading the Dunmer to victory against the evil Dwemer and the traitorous House Dagoth in the Battle of Red Mountain. If you would learn daring, follow Saint Veloth the Pilgrim, patron of outcasts and spiritual seekers. Saint Veloth, prophet and mystic, led the Dunmer out of the decadent home country of the Somerset Isles and into the promised land of Morrowind. Saint Veloth also taught the difference between the good and bad Daedra, and won the aid of the good Daedra for his people while teaching how to carefully negotiate with the bad Daedra. If you would learn generosity, follow St. Rilms the Barefooted, patron of pilgrims and beggars. St. Rilms gave away her shoes, then dressed and appeared as a beggar to better acquaint herself with the poor. If you would learn self-respect and respect for others, follow St. Arilor the Penitent, patron of tanners and miners. This foul criminal repented his sins and traveled a circuit of the great pilgrimages on his knees. If you would learn mercy and its fruits, follow Saint Seren the Merciful, patron of brewers, bakers, distillers. This pure virgin of modest aspect could heal all diseases at the price of taking the disease upon herself. Tough-minded and fearless, she took on the burdens of others, and bore those burdens to an honored old age. If you would learn fierce justice, follow Saint Felms the Bold, patron of butchers and fishmongers. This brave warlord slew the Nord invaders and drove them from our lands. He could neither read nor write, receiving inspiration directly from the lips of Almcivi. If you would learn pride of race and tribe, follow Saint Roris the Martyr, patron of furnishers and caravanners. Captured by Argonians just before the Arnesian War, Roris proudly refused to renounce the tribunal faith and withstood the cruel tortures of Argonian sorcerers. Vengeance and justice for the martyred Saint Roris was the rallying cry of the Arnesian War. If you would learn the rule of law and justice, follow Saint Olms the Just, patron of chandlers and clerks. Founder of the Ordinators, Saint Olms conceived and articulated the fundamental principles of testing, ordeal, and repentance. If you would learn benevolence, follow Saint Delin the Wise, patron of potters and glassmakers. Saint Delin was head of House Induril, a skilled lawyer and author of many learned treatises on tribunal law and custom. If you would learn the love of peace, follow Saint Maris the Peacemaker, patron of farmers and laborers. As a little girl, Saint Maris showed healing gifts and trained as a healer. She ended a long and bloody house war, intervening on the battlefield in her white robe to heal warriors and spellcrafters without regard to faction. The troops of all house adopted white robes as her standard and refused to shed the blood of their brethren. If you would learn reverence, follow Saint Lothus the Pious, patron of tailors and dyers. Contemporary and companion of the tribunals and the best-loved Alma Rula of the tribunal temple, he formulated the central rituals and principles of the new temple faith. Saint Lothus is the symbolic mortal bridge between the gods and the faithful, and the archetypal priest.
Get that far.
So there's all that. Now we can head down, but let's head up first.
Why you're leading Cretius on, I'll never understand.
This down is the way to go. We want to come up here. We've read Poison Song Book 3, but there is an East Empire Company strongbox up here that we'll naturally want to snag. The pendant inside in particular. Alright.
Try the lower section.
We're done with the town now. And as is probably obvious by the presence of a side quest, the mine turns into a real full-size dungeon. So let's head inside. You actually excavate this mine as part of the Blood Moon expansion to Morrowind, which is always fun. Anyway, down, down, down we go. Eventually we're going to run into... Oh, eventually is now. We'll start running into some little critters. Skeevers, frostbite spiders, that sort of thing. Uh-huh. Let's check this branch first. Another spider here. You can see all sorts of shit down below. You can see some inactive or depleted ebony veins. There's a spider. There's a spider. Another. So finally, here at the bottom, we have to break these boards to continue. They can, to my knowledge, all just be knocked off. There's another East Empire Company strongbox. Let's get let's get another pendant. This is 10 total. And there's the key to the locked section that Cretius talked about. And now, as you might expect, shit starts to get real. Suddenly, we're in a Nordic ruin. Draugr and everything. Couple of Death Lords. The usual, really. There's one over here that never woke up. Let's handle it. Nick this chest. And then we'll keep going. Mine's back that way, so here we go. Trying to make sure I'm not leaving anything behind me. So I know there's plenty ahead. Ah, that's what confused me so bad. Oh goodness, that was terrible. There we go. Alright. There's a scourge here. A couple of inanimate Draugr here. And here, as you might expect. There's your Death Lord. I counted 5 Draugr to kill there. Let's make sure we loot them all. Plus the ones that began inanimate. There are some subtle differences. This architecture, these grates and the grates we saw in the wall beside us earlier are not present in any of the mainland Nordic barrows, so similar but with a few differences from the mainland ruins. I like that they put in those little touches instead of purely and simply recycling assets they already had. Let's keep it going. Those are empty. That's good. Looks like I got 3 up and already moving in here. This Draugr's actually dead already, but you can loot his gear if you want to. Ah yes, here we go. It's our first run-in with Stalrim. Let's mine the Stalrim deposit, which which we can do now that we have the ancient Nordic pickaxe. You have to hit it 6 times to get a chunk. They made it take twice as long, just for giggles, I suppose. There's 1. 2. 3 Stalrim. I need 7 more. Let's search the Draugr that was entombed within. And then let's keep moving. There is an ash creep cluster. First one we've seen. Damage stamina, invisibility, resist fire, and fortified destruction. It is now off the ingredient list. We only have 2 things left on there. Emperor Parasol Moss and Netch Jelly. There's the Emperor Parasol Moss. Fortify Magicka was the only missing effect. So now Netch Jelly is the only one, the only thing left on my alchemy ingredients list. Once I have the 5 I need for the quest, I'll consume the 6th one, and we'll have discovered every alchemy effect in the game. Well, we got the standard basic soul gem spell traps. We've seen those before. Here's some bad guys. Two down, 1 to go. We'll get him soon enough. Let's check under the waterfall. There's an apprentice-locked door to the Blood Skull Barrow. Now, we're certainly going to want to spring that and check that out. It's a little side zone, a secret area. Now remember, too, Karjo's Moon Amulet, our enduring little radiant quest from the Khajiit Caravan, is inside Blood Skull Barrow. So we're going to be getting that pretty soon, which is exciting. Anyway, that animation took way too fucking long, so let's do it this way. 4, 5, 6. I need 4 more Stalrim for a later quest. And then I'll need a little bit more in order to craft something out of it too. Let's search the Draugr. Let's head back out here. Because remember, there is still 1 hostile Draugr somewhere in this area. We aren't done yet. There it is. Perfect. Well, that may be everything. It's certainly close. We got a gate over here. No quickly visible way to open it. Let's head over here. Search the 2 Draugr we killed. Check the chest with its expert lock. Hit that handle to open the gate over there, and head on through. Spell Tome Ice Spike. Pretty sure I know that one. Yep. But, you know, it's there. That's cool. Let's move on into here then. Under the stairs, we have an adept-locked chest. Interesting. A bow and 30 iron arrows. A scroll of fireball. I guess that's to let me blow the trap if I want to. There's a pretty obvious secret door. With the pull chain next to it and everything. Let's nick that before moving on. Okay, we're way above this room now. Let's keep going. You can see a tomb tunnel there. This wooden door leads to a collapsed passage with nothing but an adept-locked chest. Alrighty. Now let's head through this one then. And here we have arrived, most definitely, at something new, as well as the remains of Gratian Corellius. And we are just about at the 2-hour mark, so this becomes an excellent place to end the video. This has been Let's Play Skyrim. We've finished up in the town of Raven Rock. We've snuck through the mine and the more standard Nordic barrow to something that looks altogether new, which we will tackle on the next installment. Until then, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoy my videos, please consider clicking an ad, liking, sharing, or subscribing, any or all of which really help me out. Regardless, please know that I really appreciate the time you spend watching, and hope you have a fantastic day.